Hello, all. I am speaking to you from above the earth. Not really. Welcome to the first video in what I hope will become a series on relevant social issues of the day. My name is Jonathan, and with the enactment of the most restrictive abortion law in the United States coming into effect yesterday in Texas, I thought the first thing I should talk about is abortion. Now, for this video, I will not get into the debate of whether an unborn fetus is a legal person with a right to life, but millions of people believe they do, so I will refer to them as such. With most social issues, voting rights, rights to work, rights to own property, we're dealing with independent people whose survival is not dependent on any other single individual. This is not the case with the issue of abortion. The fundamental question that divides us on whether abortion should be a legal right or not is whose rights are more important, the fetus's right to life or the woman's right to bodily autonomy. We can see these 2 points are the dividing line simply by looking at what the two opposing sides call themselves. Those who are against abortion being legal and value the life of the fetus more refer to themselves as pro-life, while those in support of abortion being legal and value the bodily autonomy of the woman more refer to themselves as pro-choice. When an individual considers the issue of abortion, many things come into play. Does the social group of the individual tend to support or oppose abortion? Do the individual's personal or religious beliefs lead them to believe one way or the other? From the pro-life perspective, abortion being legal is a form of legalized murder of another person. From this viewpoint, roughly 1 million humans are murdered through abortion every year in the United States. This is sometimes compared to the Jewish Holocaust, in which 6 million people were murdered over the 6 years of World War II. Pro-life people will often argue, does the fetus not have a right to life? How many people are being allowed to die simply because they haven't been born yet? Or do we want to live in a world where people are allowed to kill their own children? While on the other hand, pro-choice people will argue the woman has a right to choose whether she will share her uterus with the unborn child. Individual rights. A woman has the right to be in control of her own body. Or do we want to live in a world where the government has the power to dictate personal medical decisions, violating an individual's right to bodily autonomy? Now, for those of you who are thinking, what is bodily autonomy? Merriam-Webster defines autonomy as the state of existing or acting separately from others, aka independence. Thus, bodily autonomy is the independence of one's own body from the bodies of others. Now, someone unfamiliar with the risks of birth versus abortion might think, why not just keep the child and give it up for adoption after? The issue with this is maintaining a pregnancy to term is not without risks. Now, neither is getting an abortion, but the risks are much higher with taking a pregnancy to term. So what does the data we have say? Well, according to the US National Library of Medicine, in the years between 1998 and 2010, quote, deaths associated with legal induced abortion continue to be rare events, with less than 1 per 100,000 procedures, end quote. With the exact data being an average of 7 women dying for every 1 million abortions conducted. In contrast, a study published in the October 2016 issue of the General Medical Peer-Reviewed Journal, The Lancet, reported that in 2015, an average of 264 women died for every million live births in the United States. So, while you may die from complications of having an abortion, you're roughly 38 times more likely to die from childbirth complications. This is not a minor difference. Additionally, raising a child to adulthood is estimated by the USDA to, on average, cost close to $250,000. So if someone keeps a child, not only are they doing so at increased risks to their own lives, they're also committing to a $250,000 commitment over 18 years. But this data aside, the core issue is this. On one hand, we have the life of one person who will nearly always die without the use of the woman's body, versus the risks to life and the right to bodily autonomy of the woman. Let us look at an example that takes us away from the hot topic of abortion. This will hopefully allow both groups to disregard established notions and emotional reactions on the topic of abortion and think about the core issue. For our example, we have John and his friend Greg, who just rented a brand new Ferrari. They're both enjoying the rides that they do together several times a week. But one day, while out driving, a pedestrian trips on the sidewalk and falls out in front of them. John and Greg, trying to avoid them, swerve and crash into a nearby wall, knocking themselves unconscious. But they are otherwise fine, while the pedestrian was still hit and is badly injured. All of them are taken to the hospital. Once there, it is realized that the hospital alone is unequipped to save the life of the person that John and Greg hit. And the patient will need to be connected to someone for direct blood transfusion for about 9 months, or they will die. John is the only person who can provide the needed blood. So while he is unconscious, the hospital starts the transfusion. When John wakes up, he finds himself hooked up and sharing his blood with the unnamed pedestrian. The doctors, seeing he's awake, tell him what happened and that he is the other patient's only chance to survive. Now, John feels some responsibility. He hit the pedestrian. They were out driving just for fun, and if they weren't, the pedestrian would have been fine. They wouldn't have been hit. They didn't intend to hit anyone, but accidents happen. Still, John feels torn. He doesn't want the pedestrian to die, but he doesn't want to be like this for the next 9 months. But there's more. The doctors continue and tell him that it's more complicated of a situation than it may seem. While disconnecting now is risky to him, it would definitely kill the patient. But even if he waits the 9 months, there's still no guarantee the patient will survive, although it is likely. In addition, at the 9 months mark, John himself is at 38 times greater risk of death at disconnection than if he were to do it now. Further, the patient was without oxygen to the brain for a long time, so the doctors are concerned about their ability to function normally when disconnected. What is clear is that they will need significant financial and physical support for up to 20 years, if they live that long. And as the ones who were driving, Greg and John are responsible for that support. So, John must weigh whether or not he is willing to share his body with the patient, at the greater risk to his own life, and with the expectation of a significant financial burden for 2 decades after they're finally able to disconnect without killing the patient. This is a big decision for John. It's life-altering and potentially life-threatening. So the questions are these. Should John be allowed to make this choice for himself, or should the government make it for him? Does the life of the patient mean that they have more of a right to use John's body than John does, even at the increased risk to John's life? This is what it really comes down to with abortion. Whose rights matter most? Or at least, this is what it should be about. For a sizable percentage of the US population, it is. But for another percentage of the US population, preventing abortion is about largely something else entirely. It's not about saving the fetus. It's not about medical risks to the mother. It's about punishment of the woman for having sex. In the biblical story of Adam and Eve, pregnancy and childbirth are described as the punishment given to women for eating of the forbidden fruit. Thus, if abortion is legal, people can avoid the God-given punishment for sexual promiscuity. This is itself an issue with the First Amendment to the US Constitution. If you believe that God wants pregnancy as a punishment and you make it illegal to get an abortion, you're forcing your religious beliefs on others, which is violating the First Amendment rights of those who don't believe the same way you do. If we take a moment to think about the consequences of using an unborn child as a punishment, forcing unwanted pregnancies to be carried to term, what will that do for the relationship between the mother and the resulting child? In some cases, it may turn out okay, but in others, the mother will resent the child, and the child will grow up unloved, knowing their parents didn't want them. Is this what we want? What do we really want as a society? Where having a child is sometimes a punishment or always a joy? Where we each have authority over our own bodies, or whether the government gets to decide? What do we want? Because it's up to us. That concludes my video. Thank you all for watching. I hope you found this informative and thought-provoking. I look forward to speaking with you again. Until next time, this is Jonathan, signing out.